Hey there, everybody. We are going to continue on through the text here and look at chapter 5, which is graphics and text. Now, something I can tell you about graphics and text, and this is on page 141 in the text for when you're following along, is these really are the first two things that your unknown potential future clients are going to evaluate your site on. However much currency you have in the material, so that means however timely and sensitive that information is secondary. However much actual data it is that you can give them so that they can complete whatever it was that they came to look at your site for is secondary. Your unknown potential future client is going to take less than 3 seconds to evaluate your site. Those evaluations are going to be made on color, images, and fonts, pretty much in that order. We've already had a little bit of an opportunity to talk about color. You don't want to keep things psychedelic. You want to make it easier for your user to look at your page. So you don't want to like sear their retinas with crazy colors right there in the beginning. And actually, graphics and text do the next best thing. They help give kind of a meta interpretation. They allow your user to take a step back and evaluate before I even look at the content here. Are the graphics going to support what it is that I'm looking for? Is the text going to support those things that I'm here to do? And they're going to look at the text by looking at actually the styling. So is the styling meeting my needs? Do I think that the kind of information that I'm going to get here is going to be accurate for what I'm expecting, simply based on nothing more than looking at the font faces and saying, yeah, maybe they're not crazy, or nah, they're totally crazy, I ain't coming here again. So what we are going to look at is down here in the You'll Learn How To section. We are going to describe the kinds of formats that there are available on the web. The place we do that here is with the image element. So we're going to do that. Potentially, we are going to look at things like bullets and things of that nature. I'm going to let you do that on your own. I know that that's something that you can do. We're going to look at the big ticket items. And in general, I'm going to leave rather, those little fidgety aspects of things to you. Certainly we are going to learn to configure typefaces, size, weight, and style with CSS. This is a huge deal for how it is that your unknown potential future clients are going to assess your site. And with everything else that we do, how is it that we can align and indent that text? And we're going to use the CSS to actually do that. So those are the things that we are going to do here with chapter 5. So let's get started. So we are going to start our talk about images here on page 142 by first just laying it all here out on the table. What I can tell you is that images are the most important thing that you are going to do to portray to your unknown potential future user the quality of your site. So I've just got a couple of examples here. I, like a total knob, just came over to Apple. So if we scroll down through the Apple site, I can see high quality images here. So if I click on that, we come to the iPhone XR page. If I continue on down through the apple.com page, we can see image for iPad Pro. That gives me an almost instantaneous evaluation on what's going to happen if I click that image. I'm going to go to the iPad Pro. If I continue to scroll down, can do with the iPad Pro, that lets me know almost instantaneously in a meta way, because our brains can kind of reduce, and make a decision in very, very short order based on the images that are happening there. If I click on that link, it's going to be things that I can do with my iPad Pro. Over here on the right hand side, I have pictures of the Apple Watch that lets me know in very, very short order. Click on this, get to the Apple Watch. I scroll down, I see a MacBook Air. That lets me know in very, very short order exactly what to expect there. If I continue on to any site of note, The Verge, one we consistently talk about here, you can see high quality media here, so that's images, as we scroll down through the content. So we see how AI is changing photography. That's letting me know they're going to probably talk about phones and how phones are changing that. If I scroll down through, the images on any of these are going to let me know what it is about the content I should be expecting there. And that's exactly what we want. So back here with the text, when we look at 142 in image formats, there's a few of them of note, and I expect that most of these you're going to be familiar with. I'm going to start at the very top here, and that is with the GIF. You are free, I suppose, to pronounce that as GIF in the way that the inventor of the format envisioned, but choosy moms choose GIF. For all the rest of us, it's a GIF, because clearly we're not a jackass, and with the G we pronounce the G, with the J we pronounce the J, because otherwise JPEG would be GIF-PEG, I guess. That's asinine, and nobody wants that. The GIF, some things to know about the GIF are they can have transparent backgrounds, which is nice if they are set up that way. They are animated by default. So for years and years, if you have seen on the internet, which doubtless you have, an animated image, voila, that is the GIF. Something to note about the GIF, however, is the support is only for 256 colors. So that is not going to be the most color accurate and detailed kind of image that you can use on the web. Much more common in all those other places where you are only seeing an image, and a high quality image at that. You are very, very probably looking at the JPEG, J-P-E-G. Things to note about the JPEG is it is what is known as a lossy format. So that means you are very probably going to lose some of the detail that you have there with the JPEG. The nice part about a lossy compression is we are taking an image at whatever size it is going to be, right? So 800 pixels by 400 pixels. We are taking an image at 100 pixels by 100 pixels. And whatever the quality of that image is, we can actually scale it back a little bit so that they load faster for the web. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for the JPEG and its lossy compression, so its reduction in quality, we would not have the multimedia rich web experiences that we have today. And the good news again about that lossy format, the JPEG, is that it can be represented in millions of colors. The PNG is something that all web pages actually, or all web browsers rather, actually can display. So if you are in Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer, heaven forbid, or Edge or Safari or mobile Firefox or mobile Chrome, the PNG works there. The challenge with the PNG is it is a lossless format, which means at its smallest size, if we have a JPEG and a PNG, both the same size, 800 by 600 pixels, the JPEG is bound to be smaller, whereas the PNG is bound to be bigger. That is going to mean that your website potentially, if you have based your multimedia, so your images, off of the PNG, that is going to mean that your website is going to take potentially longer to load. That is always a consideration you have, is load time. How long is my unknown potential future client going to stick around and wait? Now, if we scroll to the bottom here, this will be page 143 for you guys. There are other formats to use. So Google has a WEP. It's W-E-B-P, but it's actually pronounced WEP. And there are other formats. There's OGG, there's a bunch of different ones, and they are weird, and they're not used in the same way or with the same density. WEP is nice because it's lossless and very compressed. The problem with WEP is it is only good in Chrome, and it is only good in mobile Chrome, which means that a vast majority of your unknown potential future clients who are coming to you from other browsers, Edge, Safari, especially Safari Mobile, Firefox, all of those are going to have an issue or not even going to be able to display some of those other formats. My suggestions to you are, by preference, these three: the GIF, the JPEG, and the PNG. Stick with those, and that's the safest to actually show your web graphics. Next, we'll continue on here on page 144 in your text with the image element. Now, things of note about the image element. If you look at table 5.2, that's right here, the 5.2 tells you what the attributes are that we can assign to the image element. Things that you are very, very probably going to use are going to be at the very top here, align. Align by default is set to left. You can, however, choose right, top, middle, or bottom, but bottom you will not see particularly often because it just isn't necessarily the most convenient way to think about things, and it causes the most issues when it comes to wrap, the way that the rest of the attributes on a page are going to kind of deal with that particular image element being aligned to the bottom. It's not necessarily the easiest to use, so for the most part you're going to stick to left, which is the default, top, middle, and right. Let me do tell you that Alt is absolutely important. So if I scroll up here to the top and we look at the image source that they give you here as an example, you'll notice that Alt is there. Alt is alternative text. Alternative text on an image is for any of the millions of individuals who potentially could be visiting your website that have some sort of vision challenge. So an alt provides a more descriptive nomenclature that a text reader could use for people with visual impairments. So what does that mean? So instead of having logo.gif, that's not necessarily very descriptive. So if a reader was coming through here, the reader would say something like this. Example configures an image named logo.gif, which is located in the same folder as the web page. And then the very next thing it's going to read to me is logo.gif. And that's not good, right? It doesn't tell me about everything. However, if it was to say, the following folder as the web page, and then it was going to read for me my company name, so it would say something like Rock Valley College. At the very least, that still gives us, as an impaired user, it at the very least gives us kind of the contextual clues as to what the web page is doing, and their interpretation of the page is going to be the same as yours. It just happens that your interpretation of the page is going to be based on images, and somebody with that visual impairment is going to have to base their interpretation of the page on the text content. Next, if we look here at table 5.2, the next one we're going to look at here is the height attribute. This is the height of your image in pixels. 800 pixels, 300 pixels, 400 pixels. What I call this is your calibrated eyeball. What happens is the more you use images, the more you use text boxes, the more you get to know HTML and CSS, you are going to instinctively know the size of things. So height lets the browser know to overwrite the default size of an image, and that's going to be important. If I was simply to take an image with my phone, so whatever the phone is that's closest to me, it just so happens to be an iPhone 4, which is an older phone, right? that iPhone 4 is going to take an image that's like 1,000 pixels by 1,600 pixels. Or if on a web page, if we look at the Macs in our Mac lab, that is going to be larger than one full page in whatever default viewport my browser is going to have. And that's not necessarily what we're looking for. So I want to be able to overwrite that by declaring and specifying the height in pixels. Definitely a good idea. As we come through here, clearly you're going to have an image source. That's going to be the URL or the file name of the image, and this is required. One thing of note here is you will be primarily using the file name, and that's going to be on your local machine, right? So you're going to have a folder called image or IMG, and inside of that folder is going to be, the 3 or the 4 or the 5 images that you're looking for. That's only part of the equation. We can actually use a URL and go out to the internet to find it. So we could say, get this image from, http://www.nameofmywebsite.com/nameofmyimage.jpg. And that means that you can move your site from place to place to place, and you won't be orphaned of those images, and that's actually a very good idea. The very last thing I want to highlight here is width, and clearly that is the accompaniment to height. So you can specify height and width to help constrain the size of your images, and that is certainly a good idea. So down here, if we were to look at figure 5.6, we have an image right here, right? And in that image, or in that web page rather, we want to constrain the size of the image that's happening here. We would do that by specifying image source, so that's where to locate the image. We would specify the image height, that is how tall the image is, the image width, that is how wide the image is, and we would absolutely give it an alternative text. So instead of saying image 006.jpg, it would say, kayaked or county kayaker, something to that effect. And that would give everybody and every browser exactly the intention that you wanted from that particular image on your web page. Continuing on, we have the idea of an image hyperlink. What essentially this means is when the user clicks on an image, it would bring you to another web page. Now, in the text, if you simply set a thumbnail image link, so that's what we can see right here, the thumbnail image link. That's not particularly useful. What essentially happens here inside of the code block is we have an image of a sunset. Here's the image source. We're telling it a height and a width. And essentially, we're just saying that if you click on this, you view a larger sunset. Okay, sure. Better than that is to actually have, in our case, an href, so an anchor reference to another page. So here it's index.html. That is far better. So what this is going to do is tell your user, hey, when you're looking at my site for contextual clues, so if we come back here and we look at Apple, so to do what I did the first time, this image of the iPhone here, I know it's hard to see, this image of the iPhone, if I tap on it, it's going to bring me to the actual page for the iPhone XR. If I scroll down, if I tap on an image for the Apple Watch, it's going to take me to a new page. You can see that Apple Watch Series 4 up there. So that is an image hyperlink. We see these all over the place. If I come here to The Verge and scroll down just a little bit, doobie-doobie-doo, here we have a 49-inch ultra-wide monitor for the ridiculous rich person who needs a boatload of space, right? So I can either tap here on the link, or I can tap here on the image. So this, if I tap on it, is an image hyperlink. And that is a fantastic way to help provide more navigation and contextual clues to your unknown potential future users so that they can more easily, more readily, and with fewer barriers navigate around your web property. Next, we move on to background images. What I will tell you is background images are sneaky important in web design. And this is on page 148 for you following along in the text. If we were to simply scroll down here and look at figure 5.9, for example, and we have kind of an example here of a background image, right? This is decidedly in figure 5.9. This is decidedly 2000 web design, right? Where we have foreground text, so that says background sample 2, you can see right there. And then whatever our background image is, that's tacky, that's not necessarily what we're looking for in good modern year 2014 or so and forward. That's really not the way we're looking for background images to be used. But again, here, the property we're actually looking for is background-image, just like you see there. This is an example here of how this would look in the CSS. So body is our attribute. Background image is the property, and the value is texture.png. So that's all well and good, but how does this really show up where we would, want it to show up? And that's going to be in our web pages. What I can tell you is it's sneaky. It's all over the place. Up here at the very top of theverge.com, we can see the Verge logo. And if I kind of tap and hold on it, you can see me moving it here. And that's an image hyperlink to theverge.com. It just brings me right back to this page. But the psychedelic backgrounds you can see there, that's actually a background image. So what's that going to look like in practice? We'll come back here. We'll let this load. And what that's going to look like in practice is as follows. We would have nested on top of one another different images, essentially. So this one right here is the background image, and we're using that for one of our container classes. We're going to hear more about container classes in an upcoming video. Then what happens is here with the Verge, that goes inside of it. So what would that look like when it comes to how do we put that in actually it's both the HTML and our CSS. What we would have essentially is a box, an area, right? And this would be, something like hashtag hero. Because the hero is, again, where we would have our big banner or whatever it is that's going to have, our draw your eyes to this is who I am text. Inside of that, I would have a background. And that is going to be, and I'm going to call this BG for background. And that's going to be right here. That's going to be all of this psychedelic stuff that's happening back here, the lava lamp effect. Then inside of that, I would have another container, and this is going to have my logo. My logo would have a removed background, so that's why you don't see any background like a big plain white background behind the text for the Verge happening here. And that's how we create that effect, is actually with a background image and a foreground image. But that's only part of the deal we can do here. We can actually continue on and make this better. If you scroll down just a little bit on this page, what you'll notice is, and it's harder to see, but here on the right-hand side of the page, I have what's essentially kind of a pink color that you can see happening here and here, and a little bit less pink right here. That's actually a background image. If you'll notice over here on the left-hand side, I have a yellow color here and here and here. And as I transition over across the page, in this direction, you'll notice it gets a little less yellow, a little more pink, until we finally arrive over here at very, very pink. This is actually done with background transitions and foreground images. So the way that works is in the very, very background, so behind all of our text, but probably from here to here, we would have a, uh, a background color, so I'm going to call it a BGC. And this would transition as we go from left to right, from yellow to pink, just like so. And that's actually what we can see here to here. Then what we do is for each one of these content areas. So this here, how AI is changing photography. This is a content area. This here, what to expect from net neutrality court hearings. This stuff right here. This is another content area. Each one of those content areas is separated by a very, very small margin. You can see that happening right here and right here and right here. This is all done with background color, foreground content. And that really is the power to how to use background images. So when you look here at pages 148 through about 149, and then you position it with what you see on page 150 and 152, that goes a very, very long way to making that layered look that we expect to see in our web pages. So we can see that again here at the Apple site. You can see it's probably very difficult, but here this section and this section and this section are all separated by that little white margin between them. So remember, margins are those things between elements. So this is a content element, this is a content element, this is a content element. The whole page has a background color of roughly white. The foreground content elements have a color of roughly very, very light gray, right there, there. Whoops. Each one of those has a foreground color of very, very light gray, and then we have the images on top of those. And all of that put together makes that layered effect that we're expecting to see here on a good modern web page. It's a fantastic way to add depth to a page. It's a fantastic way to draw a user's attention from one portion of the site to another portion of the site to another portion of the site, and doing it all in a way that adds context and adds ease of navigation as we go along. So when you're looking here in chapter 5, that's all from pages 148 through about 153. And it's entirely important to the way that your user is going to interpret interacting with your page, is with images in the foreground and images in the background.